Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing awesome out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great beginning to your new week out there so far. Here to break down many things in this morning's video. The first thing we will talk about is the tropics. We have soon to be tropical storm Helene that will make landfall along the Carolina coastline, bringing a lot of impacts to the Carolinas, even areas as far west as Tennessee, rain all the way up to Virginia, maybe a little bit of rain thrown back into Georgia also, but definitely the worst impacts will be the Carolinas. So we're going to dive deep into this, talk about what's going on with this system right at this moment. We'll talk about the latest from the National Hurricane Center, all the potential impacts across the Carolinas, and we'll get you covered there. This could be taking some people by surprise this morning. They started canceling schools last night. Some people maybe were not expecting a tropical storm to make landfall for your Monday. Didn't have that in the cards, but here we are. It seems like this happens, once every hurricane season where we have these, what we call homegrown activity setups where something could get, going off like a stalled frontal boundary, some energy can consolidate, and all of a sudden within a day or two, we have a tropical storm. Typically, these are not very strong systems. Rarely do they become like strong hurricanes or anything like that, but they can become weaker tropical storms, which we are still forecasting this to become sometime later on this afternoon. I'll be honest, we were thinking this was going to be a tropical storm by the time we made this video this morning, but it's still dubbed PTC8, potential tropical cyclone 8. So we'll go over all the latest information. We'll talk about what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 also, just like we always do. Expecting some active weather out west across the Dakotas, a severe weather threat, some much-needed rain across the Rockies, even a little bit of snow. So we'll speak on all that. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If you notice there's pink covers on the bed behind me, if you're a regular viewer, you're probably like, man, why you got pink covers on your bed? Well, we're in the process of washing all of our covers and sheets and stuff like that. So we had to use the spare covers, and our spare covers are pink. So anyways, I'm sure nobody really cares or even notices. But anyways, if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. So here we are. We're just going to look at the radar, not really the satellite. This is soon to be tropical storm Helene, the H name, not Helen, Helene for the longest, kind of the beginning of the hurricane season. When I was going over all the list of names, I always thought it was Helen, but then I thought, normally Helen does not have an extra E at the end. So this is Helene. The center of circulation is right into here. The southern side of the system really void of any kind of activity as far as showers and storms. It's really, let's see if we can get this going here. And I thought we weren't working this morning. We are. We're good to go. So this actual center of the storm is probably somewhere into here, but all the action is on the northern to even northwestern and northeastern side of this system, and all this is, of course, wrapping around like that cyclonic flow, but there ain't a whole lot going on in the bottom edge of the storm. So we just got to watch this. Is this going to move more so like this today? Okay, is this going to be more so like that? I think there's still some questions, guys. I think there's a possibility it can kind of go like this also. And then when it gets kind of into this area, where is it going to go? Is it going to go on off across, the North Carolina mountains? Is it going to drift all the way into northern Georgia? Maybe even eastern Tennessee, or is it going to head up into Virginia? It's a big question. And, some people might think, well, what's the big deal? It's a weaker system. Well, it's a big deal for people who need the rain, the gusty winds. A lot of model runs have this going right over the Midlands of South Carolina. Some of them, maybe up to Raleigh. So wherever the center of the storm goes, that's where the shield of the rain goes, and some of the gusty winds and even the tornado threat that we'll talk about in this video also, will get shifted one way or the other. So I know that's a lot of lines drew on your screen here, but it is a big question because there's like weaker flow aloft. So this actual weaker low pressure out here off the coast of the Carolinas is just kind of almost controlling its own directional flow, if you will. But it still is getting forced a little bit one way, which is going right towards the Carolina coastline. So this is a look at radar on what's going on this morning as of around 6:30ish a.m. or so. So we continue to move this forward here, and we look at the latest from the National Hurricane Center. Like I said, we were kind of expecting this to be Tropical Storm Helene when we woke up this morning. It is not. Still dubbed PTC8, which stands for Potential Tropical Cyclone 8. Forecast to become a 45 to maybe around a 50 mile per hour tropical storm sometime this afternoon, and then it will make landfall somewhere between Charleston and Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, maybe close to Georgetown, somewhere into there. So wherever the center of this storm does come in, wherever the banding feature kind of wrapping around the actual center of low pressure, will probably have the strongest winds in it. And I would say the northern side of the low pressure will have the strongest winds. So I would watch out Myrtle Beach down to Georgetown. Could get some strong 60, 65 mile per hour wind gusts. I would say very isolated in those wind gusts, but it could happen. I think those are some of the high end wind gusts we could see, some of the worst case scenario wind gusts. So the center of this storm will continue to move kind of between Columbia and Florence today, and then the remnants of this system will make it all the way up to Charlotte sometime by, late tomorrow night into Wednesday morning. So it really tells you how slow this is moving. It'll take all the way till about 2 p.m. this afternoon to kind of get right here. 2 p.m. Monday to 2 a.m. Tuesday. I say 2 p.m. Monday like that's not today, it's today. So it takes 12 hours to go from right here to right here. So this thing is kind of just slowly moving. So what I'm trying to say is this is going to really influence the weather across the Carolinas for a good chunk of the week, I would say. I mean, you get all the way out to 2 p.m. Wednesday, you still got kind of a low pressure kind of drifting around the Carolinas. So what is that going to do? That's probably going to just bring cloud cover, maybe some light rain, even when this weakens. So this is going to, be impacting our weather, like I said, over the next few days. So we continue to move forward and look at the classic look here. The S stands for tropical storm, where it is forecast to become Tropical Storm Helene. D stands for depression here. But if you notice, right in here, the blue, those are where tropical storm warnings are up, all the way from just south of Charleston, all the way up to the southern flank of the Outer Banks. But if you do notice, you see this orange area kind of surrounding this X, which is actually where the center of low pressure is. It extends pretty far outward. It is now extending pretty far outward to the west too, but definitely to the north and northeast. So this tells us where tropical storm force wind conditions extend outward from the center, which I can tell you extends pretty far out. So the wind field is pretty broad. So I think that this could pack a little bit more of a punch than your average setup like this, where we have just a weak tropical storm that forms at the last second, then moves in and makes landfall wherever. I think that this could be a little bit more, I think this could pack a little bit more of a punch. I really do. So we already have some gusty rain bands moving into the Carolina coastline. So it's already producing those 35, 40 mile per hour wind gusts. We will continue to see that over the next 24 hours. So if we continue to move forward here and we take a look at what the HRRR model is showing, which is short range model guidance. All right, we'll start off for this morning around 8 a.m. and we'll keep this going here. We take it to about 11 a.m. We're starting to get some rain, making it all the way up to Charlotte, Rock Hill, starting to rain pretty heavily to Florence, to Fayetteville. We're starting to get some intense rain bandings kind of making its way into the Grand Strand to southeast North Carolina, like Wilmington, Little River, Carolina Beach, Cure Beach, Wrightsville Beach. All these areas start to get some pretty intense weather. And then we start to make it into about early this afternoon. This is when this could be really close to making an actual landfall. The actual center of low pressure is probably right in here. But remember, with a weaker system, you're not going to get convection typically wrapping all the way around this actual low pressure. So you're thinking, well, this just looks like a big blob of shower and storm activity. Well, it pretty much is, but this is definitely a tropical system developing. So we continue to move forward here. We get into early this afternoon. You see all this heavy rain here in the PD of South Carolina, the Sandhills in North Carolina. We're starting to get rain all the way up into Greensboro, all the way over to Hickory, Charlotte, just light at first, maybe some breezy conditions. But if we continue to move this forward, you see this area right here. I'm going to try to draw on here. No, not yellow. That's not going to work. This area right in here. This is where our most intense weather will most likely be later on this afternoon. This is around mid-afternoon, 3 p.m., give or take an hour. Low pressure might be somewhere in here. So this is, I guess, what you would call kind of the inner eye wall, the core surrounding the low pressure of this system, even though it's lack of one. This is where a lot of nasty weather could occur. Of course, closer to Myrtle Beach, maybe an hour or two earlier. But I mean, this extends from like Moncks Corner to Florence, all the other small communities, Fayetteville, all the way back to Wilmington. We could get some 35, 45, heck, maybe even 50-mile-per-hour wind gusts with some of these bands. Heavy rain, some flash flooding, and even the banding features are making it all the way back into Columbia now. So, you know, I know here in Columbia, where I live, by the way, if you're always wondering where I live, I've mentioned it occasionally, weekly. I live here in Columbia, South Carolina. You know, the forecast has actually changed. You know, it's looking like more rain today than it was yesterday, and it's because the low pressure is trending a little bit further south. But we continue to move this forward here. Probably makes a landfall sometime later this afternoon to early this evening. We start to get heavier rain starting to move into Charlotte. Rain starting to get thrown all the way back into Columbia, especially east of Columbia, like Camden, Chesterfield, Sumter. We'll start to get some moderate, maybe at times heavy rain, some breezy conditions. And then this is when I start to get concerned about these feeder bands right here. So at this point, low pressure, this is around 7 p.m. this evening. Low pressure might have made a landfall, might be somewhere right into here, making a landfall kind of between Charleston and Georgetown, maybe a little north, maybe a little bit of south. But the banding features wrapping all the way back to Columbia at this point, all the way down to Orangeburg. But you see these bands right here, these little feeder bands. So the flow around this is going like this, right? And then it comes up just like that. So these feeder bands are on what we call the dirty side of these tropical systems, kind of the east and northeast quadrant. This is typically where you have that southerly low-level flow, the best kinematics for a tornado threat. Of course, you got a lot of moist air. So all these bands that you're seeing right into here, you kind of see the pockets of red, orange, and yellow. These are going to be the storms right into here. Anything going on here in eastern North Carolina that has the potential to produce some tornadoes, especially later on this afternoon to this evening around dinner time. And this will continue throughout the overnight hours. We get later into this evening. You know, at this point, like around midnight, the low pressure somewhere into here. We're getting rain now tossed all the way back to the Greenville-Spartanburg area. You know, we rewind this 24 hours back, and it didn't look like, you know, the upstate of South Carolina, Greenville-Spartanburg area was going to get much rain. But at this point, check out all the rain getting pushed all the way back to Asheville, Boone, Hickory, Shelby, Gastonia, Lincolnton, all these areas, you know, Gaffney. But I am concerned about this feature right here. See this band right here kind of making its way in. Flash flooding threat could materialize. This band could very well be over here too. This band could be right in here also. I would just watch this entire area for that tornado threat, and this wherever one or two of these little feeder bands behind the actual low pressure, okay, kind of sets up. That's where we could have some dangerous weather later on tonight. So we'll have to watch that. This continues all the way throughout the overnight hours. You got this banding feature. And the crazy thing about the HRRR model, guys, is this low pressure actually goes just right over central South Carolina. So it looks like it's right over here somewhere at this point. It doesn't look like it goes over North Carolina, but continues to bring some breezy conditions. In fact, let's see if we can find, I don't think it's going to show it. Yeah, center of low pressure is like right over central South Carolina. So pretty wild stuff, guys. But that's kind of a look at what the radar could look like over the next 24 to 30 hours. Rainfall between now and the next, this takes us all the way to actually about Thursday morning. Okay, this could shift a little south. In fact, if you watched the video last night, you could probably already note there's a little bit of a difference on this area right into here. Okay, some of the heavier rainfall totals have shifted a little bit, I would say southwest or west. So, you know, Columbia could be an area where, you know, depending on what side of town you live on, you might only get a 1/4 inch of rain. But then if you go to like the northern side of Richland County, for example, you might get an inch and a half of rain. But definitely the corridor of heaviest rain is expected to be right into here. And we could get a flash flooding setup that materializes in the foothills in the mountains of North Carolina, with a lot of moisture getting pushed up against the higher elevations of North Carolina. A little bit of some upslope flow, if you will, that really enhances the rainfall. But of course, wherever the core of the system goes into, which will probably be the northern side of the actual low pressure, that's where your most rain is going to fall. And, you know, we've already picked up a lot of rain in this area, but another 1/2 foot of rain is possible right in this area of east North Carolina. But I would watch for this southern edge right here to get pushed a little bit further south if this low pressure kind of goes like this. It's just something to watch here. A lot of rain up in the Virginia too, but not maybe as, I would say maybe not as much rain as what you were forecasting maybe a day or so ago. It's because this low pressure has trended south in model guidance, but a good amount of rain still forecasted up in Virginia, still an inch, 2 inches of rain depending on where you live. So definitely much needed rain, but this is going to be a washout to start your work week for sure. We just need to continue to watch these trends for South Carolina. Kind of a weird forecast. And, you know, I wouldn't say this has snuck up on me, but I think that it's almost, I wasn't expecting the kind of the back and forth of model guidance and kind of the shorter term. Like that low pressure, you know, once upon a time was looking like I was going to go right into North Carolina. It is really trending to South Carolina now. Now, the National Weather Service forecast for a potential wind gust. This isn't consistent wind speed, so when you see 65, 66 miles per hour down here, that doesn't mean we're just going to have a steady 65 mile per hour winds out here. That's not the case. It's pinpointing where potential highest end wind gust could be, maximum wind gust. And it's saying, you know, Myrtle Beach, maybe a 54 mile per hour wind gust is possible, up to Little River. Maybe as high end as a 60 to 66 mile per hour wind gust. And it shows the core of this system kind of straddling that North Carolina, South Carolina border. And Fayetteville could get a strong 40, 45 mile per hour wind gust, some strong gusty winds all the way up into Charlotte. But I mean, breezy everywhere else too. This is just where the core of this system moves in. Now, when I'm saying core, guys, I don't mean the actual center of low pressure. That will be right into here, and that'll move in probably somewhere like that. But the northern flank of this system will have the strongest winds right into here. So that is where our worst of our winds are going to be, right into here. We're probably going to have, when it's all said and done and they kind of go over the max wind gusts from this system, it's going to be probably right into this area right there. So if you live in this area right here, be aware. Be aware. I mean, this could catch some people by surprise. Thankfully, I think they went to an e-learning day in like Horry County and many other counties in North and South Carolina. It's probably a good idea because this is going to move in right when you would let the kids out, the worst conditions, I would say. But I think it's worth showing the HRRR model, which typically overdoes winds. But I think just the broad nature of this wind field with this storm is pretty impressive for a pretty weak storm system. And it shows all of South and North Carolina getting very gusty winds today. Once again, this is potential max wind gust. Of course, it'll be the strongest with that onshore flow getting pushed up against the Carolina coastline. So, I mean, anywhere from, I would say, Georgetown up to the southern flank of the Outer Banks. Heck, even Charleston up to the southern flank of the Outer Banks could get anywhere from 35 to 55 mile per hour wind gust. And it does show some strong gusty winds, even pretty far inland. I mean, almost all the way to Columbia, to Charlotte, to Fayetteville, even up to Raleigh. Just a big, I mean, check it out. I mean, hopefully you know where you are, at least the general area where you live in the state of whichever state I'm showing here, which is the Carolinas, Virginia. But in general, some very strong winds across the Carolinas is expected today. So don't let this catch you by surprise. Please be safe today. But I do think the worst conditions further inland will happen later on in the day period into tonight, actually. So definitely watching out for that. There is a tornado risk, and this could uptrend at the next 8:30, 9 a.m. update, but there's a 2% risk of a tornado, a very small section of eastern South Carolina, and pretty much all of eastern North Carolina, where if you live in this green area, that's where you have a 2% chance of a tornado within 25 miles in the given location. So let's take that serious for sure, even though it's not a high-end threat. If we look at the updraft velocity swath with some of these rotating cells that we'll get going later on this morning into this afternoon, these highlighted colors indicate where there's some rotation with some of these storms, what we call the updraft velocity swath or track. And I do think we'll get a few tornado warnings today. We might even get a tornado watch issued for eastern North Carolina, portions of South Carolina. So just be careful in this area with these feeder bands, you know. Just don't let this catch you by surprise. I know I keep saying this, but this area right here is going to have a tornado risk that develops later on today, especially the closer that the low pressure moves. And the further south this goes, for example, if for some reason this low pressure kind of goes more so into Charleston, like that, I think you introduce more of more of South Carolina into this tornado threat, and you would extend, I would say, this tornado risk a little bit further south down the South Carolina coastline. Just, something to watch for sure. So we'll get this all back off. We'll keep rolling here. Now, there is a little bit of storm surge we need to watch out for. 1 to 3 feet, high-end scenario from, I would say, Georgetown all the way up to through the Outer Banks. 1 to 3 feet of storm surge up into some of these bay areas, these inlet areas. Water could get pushed up against the coastline, so just be aware of that. I don't expect that to be a huge concern whatsoever. But moving forward here, that'll be the last really big update on soon-to-be Helene. But you see it here, 8 stands for potential tropical cyclone 8. We're done talking about that. Gordon has weakened into a tropical depression, which is what was expected. Is there anything else out there? There's not. One thing I want to watch out for here in the next day or two, maybe 3 days, is I think we'll get an area of interest that gets introduced somewhere into this region right down here. Don't want to say, hey, see if Mitch can call it or anything like that, but I do think we'll get a 10 or 20% chance of something developing over the next 7 days in this area. Let's watch it. I think by Wednesday or Thursday at least, we could have something, maybe as early as tomorrow, especially if model guidance keeps showing something. That's exactly what we're about to go over. I do want to watch that area. We continue to move. Let's take a look at the GFS that's still running this morning. We'll start off for about Wednesday morning this week. We take it into Thursday morning. We take it into Friday morning. Not really anything out there. Saturday morning, we get into Sunday morning. We're starting to get just areas of green down here, just a lot of tropical moisture, right? And then we take it all the way into Monday morning. See an L pop off down there in the Caribbean. Does it get anything going? On this run of the GFS, it really doesn't. It doesn't really ever get anything going between now and the next 10, 11, 12 days. If you look at the run from last night, and we kind of go back a little bit, it does get a low pressure going right into here. Okay, and then it kind of cruises it over Cuba, gets pulled northward, and we just got to watch for something developing right there. Now, I can tell you the overnight model guidance kind of dropped off on it a little bit, but if we're looking at the GFS ensemble guidance, which only goes out 156 hours out, so we might actually have to switch it to the OOZ. We go and just take this out to about as far out as we can go, which is all the way into this coming Sunday midday. We're starting to see some members popping off down here in the central and western Caribbean. You see these numbers. This indicates low pressures, which we're not going to have multiple low pressures down here. This is just ensemble guidance. Kind of throws all the members, which by the way is 21 members on the GEFS ensemble, and puts them on an output for us. But you can see the coloring down here, the yellowing. This tells us that there's a growing signal for some sort of low pressure to develop down here. And if we go back and look at the OOZ model run, same signal was there. This signal grows and then kind of sneaks into, now it's wanting to kind of more so sneak into the Gulf of Mexico. But we get about 10 days out and there is a signal for some sort of tropical system here. Maybe, it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, the Southwest Atlantic, but it looks like it originates from the Caribbean. So we will continue to watch that. Now let's talk about what's going on across the lower 48. We even have some severe weather going on right now across North Dakota. A lot of activity across the Dakotas, even this kind of thin line of very stationary shower and storm activity across Nebraska, even extending into northern sections of Kansas. We got some rain continues to get kind of pulled across areas of Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Southwest Missouri. That has been around for a while. Cluster up of energy off the coast of Mexico and Texas down here, bringing a little bit of rain to like Brownsville. We got some rain surging across areas, the southern Rockies, Arizona, New Mexico, some moisture into Colorado. Check out all the much needed moisture across the Rockies too, Nevada. And then there is our tropical system that's organizing off the coast of the Carolinas. Now we look at watches, warnings, and advisories. Here are those tropical storm warnings in the burgundy color here in the Carolina coastline, flood watches into areas of South and North Carolina. Those are the heat advisories that continue day after day down here in southern Florida. We got wind advisories across areas of the southern Rockies. We do have lake wind advisories too in certain areas like across the Carolinas, but those don't really show up on this map. So moving forward here, I didn't show this on the update on the tropics with soon-to-be Helene, but there is a moderate risk of flooding which means in the red area, there is a 40% chance of flash flood guidance being met within 25 miles in a given location in that red area for areas in North and South Carolina. But a very large area of the Carolinas, even extreme southern Virginia, have a slight risk, which means there's a 15% risk of flash flood guidance being met. And then you also have that slight risk up here for areas in Minnesota and North Dakota. So the severe weather threat today, there is the marginal risk in the Carolinas, 2% risk of a tornado. But you actually got a slight risk up here in North Dakota and Minnesota. Tornado risk, a 2% risk of a tornado in this area up here in the kind of the upper Midwest region, the plains, the high plains. And then we got the 2% risk of a tornado down here in the Carolinas, which we've already discussed. And then the wind threat, there is a 15% risk in this yellow area of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. A little bit of a hail threat also with this, a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger in this region. And there is a risk of severe weather across the Four Corner states. This includes like Salt Lake City. So we do need to watch out for some severe weather there. Now, I know we've already went over the southeast for the most part, but I will just kind of give you a broad look. There is our tropical system that will make a landfall sometime this afternoon into the South Carolina coastline, but we're going to continue to get just widespread shower and storm activity across Mississippi, into Arkansas, even Louisiana, even the extreme western panhandle of Florida, southern areas of Alabama. You guys will continue to experience some of these just tropical downpours and shower and storm activity. But a lot of rain gets pushed into the Carolinas. We'll deal with this all night. Some breezy conditions. I mean, there it is. There's the HRRR model moving the low pressure right over my house by this time tomorrow morning. So the HRRR model has this moving pretty far south. So that's interesting to note here. But we're going to wake up to a lot of activity, but nothing high end or anything like that. Just, much needed rain, honestly. But the Northeast, anything interesting today? It's been pretty quiet for about a week. Well, not really. We get all the way into tonight, nothing going on, all the way into tomorrow morning. And then you start to see some showers that start to greet you guys down the mid-Atlantic, really the central apps down the southern West Virginia, eastern Kentucky. Some rain making it all the way into the southern half of Virginia also. But the rest of the New England and Northeast, there's not really anything going on weather-wise today. The south central U.S. will continue to get these showers, maybe even some storms in Arkansas, Little Rock, down into southern Arkansas, the Mississippi Delta area. Southern Texas could get some storms. We're going to get a lot of activity cruising through Colorado, areas of New Mexico throughout the next 24 hours, really, all the way into tomorrow morning. We continue to get these showers and storms here in western Colorado. Some of these could be strong to severe. I don't expect anything crazy out of this, but definitely a just lower pressure overhead, fueling plenty of lift for a lot of activity there. So the north central U.S., the Great Lakes region will continue to have this extension of summer. It's been very warm the last several days up here. Upper 80s. It's been warmer up here than it is been down here in the south. We've been just protected by the cloud cover and the shower and storm activity in the clouds. But we're going to get some storms up here in the Dakotas today, especially North Dakota. These storms will extend all the way into northern sections of Minnesota also. And then by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, could just be waking up to some shower activity across the plains and the upper Midwest. But just here's a closer look at my friends here in North Dakota. Look at these storms, powerful. And they will extend all the way into southern sections of Canada. But these storms straddling that Canadian-North Dakota line here, they could pack a punch. So if you're tuning in from up here in these northern counties of North Dakota into the northwestern counties of Minnesota, guys, these storms, don't let them catch you by surprise. Damaging winds, large hail. This is around 7 p.m. this evening. Very possible. So just be careful with these storms today. They will cruise through the area, and by the time waking up tomorrow morning, things will calm down. So this afternoon to this evening into the late evening hours, it's going to be the main threat. There is a tornado risk with this too. I don't want to ignore that. There is a strong signal for rotating updrafts that go right through this area. So to me, this screams two things. One, there'll be a little bit of a tornado risk, but two, these could produce some pretty large hail up here. So be aware of that in the northern counties of North Dakota, northwestern counties of Minnesota for the severe storms later on today that are likely going to occur. Now, across the Rockies, I can mention every single state. For example, earlier in the day period, we're going to have this plume of moisture that really gets going across Colorado could get some strong to severe storms in eastern Utah into western Colorado. Some big storms are possible in northwestern New Mexico, even in areas of Arizona. So you really want to watch this area right here in the Four Corner states, as a lot of flow just moves right over this area. And these could just produce some gusty winds, frequent lightning, some hail. And then we got these other, organized areas of activity too, along with the actual low pressure. You see this spin over areas in northern Nevada. This will throw some snow in the higher elevations of the Sierra Nevada. But check this out, just a lot of energy out here over the next 24 hours, kind of just pivoting right over Nevada, Idaho, all the way up into Montana, even sections of Wyoming. It's just everywhere out here. There's a lot of energy, much needed moisture. And this continues into tomorrow also. We'll have another kind of event like we're going to get today, where we're just going to have a surge of heavy moisture and storm activity across western Colorado that will make it all the way into southern Wyoming. And then by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, check out all the deep blues you're seeing over Yellowstone National Park, the Rockies of Wyoming. And look at all this activity, this storm activity making its way across Colorado, even as far south as New Mexico. This is getting into tomorrow afternoon. Look at all these storms into eastern Wyoming. Look at all the energy over the northern Rockies of Idaho and Montana. So definitely a lot of activity out west. And if we look at rainfall just over the next 48 hours, definitely much needed rain. Pockets of 1 to as much as 1 to 2 inches of rain out here. And even some snow will fall too. Okay, like especially Wyoming. You take a closer look here. Let's just look at the northern plains here. Check out Wyoming right there. Even the higher elevations of Utah. I mean, several inches of snow. So this is starting to get to that time of the year, folks. So temperatures, pocket of cooler air across the Carolinas with this tropical system moving in. A pocket of cooler air also across kind of the Mississippi Delta area, north, west and east of it. Look at this warmer air where you're not getting, any sort of cloud cover or rain or shower activity. Even the Northeast, 70s and 80s. The Midwest, 80s. The Great Lakes region, 80s, just an extension of summer. Pretty warm across the plains, pretty much the middle of the country. We'll get into the 80s and 90s. Cooler across the west with low pressure overhead. But that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'll get caught up with all the comments later on this afternoon. I know I'm very much behind from over the weekend. But that's all I got. Stay safe across the U.S. today with all the weather ongoing. Love you guys. Appreciate y'all. Y'all have a wonderful Monday.